In a modest older neighborhood on Green Bay's west side, renters can find a pretty good deal.
Yes.
How much do you rent for?
$675.
So Jason Craning with his family recently moved into this single-family home on Norwood Avenue. Coming from Florida, Jason was pleased with the low rents he found. But it turns out as a taxpayer, he's actually paying for more than just his home.
So if I told you one of your neighbors, the state is paying $2,500 a month rent for that, what would be your reaction?
The state's paying for it?
Yes.
He's not paying for it?
No. Tax dollars.
It's disheartening. Especially when I work hard and my wife works hard. We have a child. So yeah, it's disheartening. It's unfortunate.
The home in question is similar in size to the Craning rental home, but documents obtained from DHS, the Department of Health Services, show the state is paying $2,500 a month in rent. And it's to house a convicted sex offender on supervised release.
Like I said, it's upsetting. There's no other words I can. If I said other words, you'd have to bleep them.
Yeah. Neighbors figure a fair rent for the property should be $500 or $600 a month. That makes $2,500, 4 to 5 times the going rate. But that is not the only example of high rental rates. 2 blocks away, the state is renting this home for $1,800 a month to house another sex offender.
Yeah, it's plain stupid. Spending people's tax money like that. It's crazy. Yeah. Rent $2,500 and $1,800. That needs to stop now. It does.
The state is currently paying the rent on 28 homes across the state. 4 of those are in Brown County. The total rent payments for all 28 homes is nearing $46,000 a month. That comes to $550,000 a year. It should be pointed out these sex offenders who were not identifying have served their full prison sentence. They are on supervised release from the state's Sandridge Treatment Facility in Mauston. That's where the most dangerous sex offenders after prison are involuntarily committed if a judge rules they are sexually violent persons. 344 live here today. If a court decides they're no longer a danger, they can be released. Those who have made improvements but still need supervision can petition for supervised release. Sandridge officials originally agreed to an on-camera interview to discuss the costs of the supervised release program. They even offered to show me around the place. But all that was canceled by a DHS spokesperson. She called to indicate the state agency was not happy that we were going to identify where the properties were located. In an exchange of pre-interview emails, though, I did ask about those high rental costs. Lloyd Sinclair, the Sandridge Community Programs Director, told me, quote, "We seek to find the best bargains. We're all taxpayers and want to keep costs down." He went on to say, landlords know that we have so many impediments to finding suitable housing, and they also often put up with a fair share of harassment to themselves and sometimes their families, so they charge us a premium. Sinclair told me the state often contacts landlords they've worked with in the past when additional rental properties are needed. And according to state documents, 2 landlords, it turns out, rent multiple homes to the state. 3 of the homes in Brown County are owned by William Travis, who rents and manages properties through Travis Enterprises. When contacted by phone, Travis did not want to talk about his rentals. But real estate records show the Norwood Avenue home owned by Travis was purchased back in 2009 for just $32,000. At $2,500 a month, the state could have owned the home in just 13 months, but instead continues to pay the rent. I asked Sandridge officials why not just buy the homes. They indicated that was not an option and it would take the state legislature to change that. So I tracked down State Senator Michael Ellis of Neenah, president of the Senate, to find out. Is there a law that needs to be changed?
Well, there's only one law that we could find. There is no law that says the state cannot own a facility and house people. That's not the deal.
Ellis looked into the rental costs and agreed buying homes makes more fiscal sense.
Over 10 years of what we're doing, it's going to cost us $5.5 million over the course of the next 10 years. We also know that we could purchase 9 homes and save $4 million. We know that because it's just pure mathematics.
Ellis says the legislature would have to alter the state statute that deals with how many sex offenders can be placed in a given area. His figures include placing 3 offenders in each purchased home. Right now, DHS policy allows no more than 2 offenders in the same residence. But in Brown County, all 4 live alone in high-priced rentals, including those 2 in Green Bay who are just 2 blocks apart.
Well, I know it sounds ridiculous. It does, but we're going to look into it. And I know we can save money. You triggered this thing. I did not. But it caught my attention when you were telling me what we're paying for rent. That's just money down the drain.
A special legislative committee recently issued a report evaluating the criteria for granting a sexually violent person supervised release. But there was no scrutiny of the housing costs. Ellis, who was not a part of the committee, says he will pursue a fiscal review. On special assignment, Mark Leland, Fox 11 News. Inflated rent being paid by the state to house sex offenders on supervised release raised red flags by state legislators when Fox 11 on special assignment uncovered the costs in February. Rent on this home was found to be $2,500 a month, as much as 5 times the going rate for its Green Bay neighborhood. Now a review of the Department of Health Services program by the state's Legislative Audit Bureau is recommending ways to save taxpayers money.
And we're always looking for better ways of not only providing the best services to taxpayers, but ultimately to protect families and children in the state of Wisconsin. So we've been open to this audit.
DHS Deputy Secretary Kevin Moore says the department is just now reviewing the 44-page audit report. The audit highlights not only high rental costs, but also monitoring and transportation costs for sex offenders occupying the rental properties.
This is absolutely taxpayer money being wasted.
State Senate President Mike Ellis of Neenah requested the audit based on our on special assignment investigation.
We are looking at it. You have been looking at it. And now that we've seen it, but why wasn't this taken care of in-house?
The state audit agreed with Fox 11's findings that rental costs to house sex offenders were elevated in many circumstances. It also found the Department of Health Services paying dramatically higher rates for monitoring and transporting sex offenders on supervised release. The audit shows DHS currently pays nearly $70 an hour for monitoring and transportation. Compare that to the roughly $31 an hour the Department of Corrections pays for transportation. And when unscheduled transportation is needed, DHS pays even more, $91 an hour. Last year, the monitoring and transportation costs hit $1.3 million.
We view audits as tools for improvement, and so we really think that these are opportunities for us to improve our processes and procedures.
Among the recommendations, DHS is asked to establish written policies to identify potential residences for sex offenders, keeping cost and location in mind. DHS also needs to work to reduce housing costs and take steps to reduce monitoring and transportation costs. The audit recommends DHS come up with options to discharge offenders who are eligible to be released but haven't applied.
And there's something wrong with the process because this should not be an eternal option.
Give me a ballpark figure based on the recommendations. If they follow these, how much money will taxpayers save?
I think just to start with, if they were go to multiple individuals in a dwelling, they could save close to $1 million right there.
The Department of Health Services is being directed by the Legislative Bureau to implement the changes being recommended and then report back to the Legislative Committee on the progress being made by April of next year. In Madison, Mark Leland, Fox 11 News. A Fox 11 investigation found examples of high rent, with the state paying $2,500 a month to rent this home in Green Bay, while similar houses rent for $600. And $1,600 a month for this house in Manitowoc, where neighbors with larger space pay as little as $400. In each case, one sex offender resides at each residence. Members of the Joint Legislative Audit Committee want answers as to the cost and placement of sex offenders on supervised release. It has directed the Legislative Audit Bureau to evaluate the program and come up with cost-saving solutions.
Representative Kirkman. Aye.
The push for an audit found unanimous support from the bipartisan committee members on hand. At issue are taxpayer-funded rental properties used to house sex offenders on supervised release.
And I applaud the citizens that have highlighted this in your TV station also. I mean, we're looking for ways to do things cheaper.
This audit as scoped is framed around the supervised release program.
State Auditor Joe Chrisman indicates his investigation will include a cost analysis of the supervised release program and options to save money. Legislative rules requiring the placement of sex offenders will also be scrutinized to look at savings and community safety. A public hearing prior to approving the audit provided testimony supporting the review. Speaking out were several Northeast Wisconsin residents who had been trying to get the legislature to take notice of the issue for more than a year.
If we sound somewhat upset, it's probably because we are. We don't mean anything to be mean or vicious, but we've been frustrated by the process.
We have spent over the last year and a half, a lot of hours on this. And to me, the whole system, the cost is way out of line.
The supervised release program is run through the Sandridge Treatment Center in Mauston, where the most violent sex offenders after serving their prison time are committed. Sandridge paid $550,000 last year to rent 28 homes for sex offenders. Sandridge officials acknowledge a premium is currently paid in order to secure some of its rentals, and now they welcome any cost-saving ideas.
So we welcome it. We hope that maybe out of this process there'll be other ideas that we haven't explored.
An audit of the program comes at a good time, with Governor Walker's proposed budget adding funds to the supervised release program over the next couple of years in anticipation of more sex offenders being placed on supervised release. The two-year proposed budget includes an additional $900,000 for the supervised release program the first year, with another $1.4 million the second year, with sex offenders on supervised release estimated to increase from 33 today to 43 by 2015. In undertaking the audit, committee members raised their own questions.
And does it make sense that maybe the state owns some of the properties that these people are placed in, as opposed to having private folks or private corporations?
That question and others should be answered when the audit is completed this summer. At that time, legislators say they will review the findings to see which cost-saving suggestions can be implemented, and that could include changing current laws. On special assignment in Madison, Mark Leland, Fox 11 News. Your tax dollars go toward renting some 30 homes across the state for sex offenders on supervised release. Fox 11 Investigates uncovered huge rents being paid by the state's Department of Health Services. They say the money is needed to entice landlords to rent. But we've discovered DHS has paid double, triple, even quadruple the going rate. This house in Green Bay rented for $2,500 a month, with the landlord nearly recouping his entire investment in the house in just 1 year.
Why does DHS have these cash issues here where they're paying a lot of money for things that don't need to cost that much?
Internally, I think this is the way it's always been done, and until somebody lit a fire under them, they're just going ahead with it.
Since our Fox 11 investigation into rental costs earlier this year, State Senator Mike Ellis pushed for and got the Legislative Audit Committee to order an audit of the supervised release program. That audit found similar high rents being paid at taxpayer expense. Its recommendation: negotiate better contracts and seek out other landlords.
What we'll be asking for are additional firms to who have the ability to rent to us, who are willing to rent to us and are willing to rent to us knowing what risks they will be taking.
Jason Cram heads up the supervised release program through the state's Department of Health Services. He says changes are taking place.
What we're looking for is a firm, or multiple firms would be great if we could accomplish, if we could get that, who could provide the services that we need across the entire state of Wisconsin.
DHS will put out for bids in January contracts for housing sex offenders. In the past, Fox 11 Investigates found DHS went back to the same landlords to secure rental properties. The practice was going on with little or no public notification that properties were even needed. That meant just a few landlords owned a bulk of the more than 30 homes being rented by DHS to house sex offenders.
Hopefully this is an opportunity to drive the rents down.
Absolutely, absolutely. Competition in the rent would be ideal if we can not have a small monopoly of firms. If we could have a number of firms who could work for us, that would be the ideal.
One question not answered by the state audit: why doesn't the state simply purchase some of the homes it needs and cut out the middleman landlord?
If they had bought that home for $32,000, they wouldn't be paying $45,000 to somebody else in rent. And if that sprinkles through the system, mathematically they could save a ton of money. They did not take that subject up.
So I raised the issue directly with Cram.
Why doesn't DHS just own the properties themselves?
That's a great question. First of all, we don't have the DHS. I mean, my program doesn't have the authority to go and purchase a house and then rent.
Logistically, Cram says the process would not be cost effective since most sex offenders occupy the homes on average for 2.5 to 3 years. Then the house could be vacant since offenders are returned by law to the county of their conviction. Ellis says a change in the law could make state-owned homes a better option for taxpayers, and he plans to press the issue.
We keep asking because you sprung the leak in the boat, and we're going to find out what's going on.
With all the attention our investigation into high rents created, many of you even asked, how can I rent a property to the state? Well, we have contact information to do that on our website at fox11online.com. But I should point out, since our stories aired, the state has been able to secure properties at lower rents. In Green Bay, Mark Leland, Fox 11 News.